Hey, housewives.
Hey, housewives.
Welcome back.
Well,
We are so excited for today's episode. This is a woman who, when you start to hear her talk, you just want to sit having coffee with her. Like, she is such a light and joy. And she's someone who has walked through something difficult to her and her family, but has continued to shine her love for Jesus and her child all the way through.
absolutely. And you wouldn't think just talking to her, if you were to run into her at the grocery store line, like you wouldn't think anything terrible has ever happened to her. She is such a joy. She's funny.
Yeah.
And we had such a fun conversation with her, even in the midst of a topic like this. And again, this is another topic that, as churches, I think we fail our congregations to wrap our arms around people that have this and she even says it herself, like she had nowhere to turn. And it just makes me sad. But this is really powerful.
Yeah, and I think our culture has tend to lean into this, we'll just take care of ourselves, worry about ourselves, not worry about others.
Yeah.
And that's not what God calls us to do. He calls us to love others and to lean into, whatever they're going through and just come alongside them and walk through them. And I think Kim has given us a prime example of how to love your child no matter what they are going through and to be a voice of just biblical truth in a space that is hard, yet be able to say, like, hey, I love you. And I'm going to continue to help people in the church and in the Christian community and just be an encourager to them when they're going through this with their own family or a friend or someone that they love really closely.
Yes. So this episode is for the one who loves Jesus and has a homosexual child. Hey, housewife.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back. We have got another incredible episode for you that you're not going to hear anywhere else. So, without further ado, I'm going to have Tracy introduce our guest.
Yes. Well, first off, thank you, Kim, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Okay. So, friends, today we welcome a voice of compassion and understanding in a space that can often be difficult to navigate. Kim is our guest. Her story offers empathy, hope, and healing for Christian parents who are navigating faith beside their LGBTQ child. When her son first disclosed that he was gay, her family was left feeling isolated and alone, and their church didn't have adequate resources to help them answer their questions. After traveling this road for nearly 10 years, she created Pride and Promises as a resource for families who want to hold onto their faith while they hold onto their children without compromising their beliefs or their love for their children. Kim's passion for families is evident as she helps build bridges between God's promises, gospel love, and their LGBTQ children. From understanding a child's perspective to navigating parental emotions, digging deep into faith, and looking to the future, Kim's heart is to help parents understand the journey and preserve relationships all through the lens of Scripture. Friends, you are not alone, and we welcome Kim to help you navigate and hold on to two precious things: your faith and your family. Welcome, Kim.
Welcome.
Thank you. That sounds like a lot to live up to.
Well, I absolutely love your bio is so it's us.
Yes.
It's you are a just a part of Unlikely Housewives already. These are the messages that we speak to our audience on the weekly. You are not alone. We all go through really hard things. We are pointing to Jesus and our relationship with him and that we are in community and we got to talk about some of these hard things that some people tend to
Absolutely.
shy away from. And it's been such a joy to get to know you. So let's just have you tell our listeners a little bit about you.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of unpacked it. That's the heart of who I am. The backdrop to that is, 30 something years ago, I fell in love in college when I was 19 with my husband, and we have now been married for 32 years.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank
Congrats.
you. Thank you. He's fabulous. We have so much fun together. Even at, we're doing the empty nester thing right now.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Wow.
remember when the kids were, I think Connor was 15, he's like, we have to prepare now because all of a sudden our house is going to be empty. And I thought, crazy, it's so far away. And
Mhm.
Shazam, here we are. It went
Yeah.
really quickly. So we're having a blast. But that family that I speak of, we went from a married couple to a family of five in under 5 years. We had three kids in two
What?
and a half years.
Mm. That's a tight squeeze.
And then do you get a TV? I mean, is that then you guys found out how that worked or
Sure. No, we were always going to have a set of two close together, wait 3 or 4 years, and have another set of two. But that third one came screaming right after number two, and she literally screamed her head off for 2 years. And we said, we're at go for
Yeah.
energy. So we stopped at
Uh-huh.
three and reconsidered at a point, and then thought, no, three is great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we were just that family, like doing life. And I was involved in our women's Bible studies at church, taking, trudging all my kids to church and
Mm.
living the dream of raising my family within the church and doing the formula. If you do A plus B, you're going to get C. And it's always going to have this beautiful bow on it. It's going to be packaged up neatly, and you're going to live this beautiful Christian life.
It's so funny that you mentioned the formula because we have already some of the other guests that we've spoken to with our this series is so many of them is like I was doing everything you're supposed to do. Like I
Yeah.
was doing the checklist. Like it we were supposed to live happily ever after. And so I mean, I don't it's I say that because I don't know whether it's immaturity in our like, and I don't mean it as a bad thing, but like as Christians, like we've gone to church for so long, we've listened to pastors for so long saying, God is love and it's all happy and it's, and once you become a Jesus follower, like no, actually life gets usually harder. Um,
Yeah.
like that's
Yes.
kind of the whether it's now or 10 years from now, like you're going to have a purpose, a testimony, a message that God's going to use us for, but we're conditioned. That's the word I was looking for. Conditioned for this checklist life. And
Yes.
I think culturally people make that like you go to high school, you get your college degree, you get
Right.
a job, then you make six figures and then,
You live happily ever after.
right. And like, that's not,
And you leave a giant investment to your children. The end.
right. Ta-da! So,
Yes.
okay. Sorry. I just wanted to tie that correlation in.
It's so true. And I just sat down with our one of our women's directors at church, and I said, I did the A plus B equals C, and I got A plus, you know, 3 squared equals purple, and so did everybody else. And
Yeah.
she said, yeah, I feel badly because I was women's director, and I believe the formula. And we forget that we take left turns at Albuquerque all the time, and God throws us curveballs to say, do you believe me to be who I say that I am? Do you trust me in the middle of things that are unexpected? And will you follow me even when it's hard? And
Those are
boy, did we hit that thing hard. We came up against that. And first of all, it came in the form of teenage rebellion, right? Like I've homeschooled my kids. I even did that part of the formula. And
Wow. Because that was before homeschool. I mean, now homeschooling
kind of a little bit more,
more resources now
Yeah.
and everything
Right.
since COVID,
Yeah.
everything. So yeah, you were really in the thick of it.
Yeah, we were trailblazing and, doing
Yeah.
all the things the right way, following. And it was fun and it was good. And Connor is our oldest.
Mhm.
We started seeing a lot of angst and rebellion and things that we just did not expect. And we thought this is all he did go to high school. Once we hit high school, the kids went into the school system.
At
And
ninth
we
grade.
thought, what's that?
Is it ninth grade?
Ninth grade. Yep.
Okay. So what age is that? Sorry, I'm not at that. Is that
He was
14?
15.
15.
He was
Yeah.
15. He started in seventh in a charter school that was
Okay.
kind of a hybrid between home and public, and then he
Mhm.
went to public high school.
Okay.
And he was bullied intensely. Like he went in loving ninth grade
Oh.
and did great. And the teachers were like, this kid is so involved and he participates. And 10th grade rolled around and we had a whole different deal on our hands. And we thought it was the result of bullying, that he was just making really bad decisions. Grades were slipping, started with some substance getting
Yeah.
entangled with substance abuse. And we just did not understand. And it got to a point where it was so bad. That's a whole other episode. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it got so bad that we were like, we have to get this kid out of here or he's going to die because it
Yeah.
ended up being attempts on his life. And so he left our home and went to a place for struggling teens for a year. Fast forward a bunch of years, went to that program. It wasn't a drug program or anything. It was just struggling teens, get them out of this environment because we thought all the bullying was taking place. Fast forward to age 22, he finally comes out to us and discloses that he's gay. All of that behavior was wrapped in shame and in fear. Couldn't come out to us because he had seen kids in Christian families come out. And that day, their belongings were strewn across the front yard and said,
Mhm.
"You don't have a place here. You're outside of God's will, and we can't have that here." What? So terrified to come out
Yeah.
and wrought with shame
Mm.
because we had our kids in youth group and we took them to church every Sunday and we taught our children biblical sexuality and living according to scripture and all the things that we do, that he did not feel like he had a safe place to say, "I have a question. I am
Mhm.
struggling and I don't know what to do with this."
Wow.
So
And
I have a question just for like
yeah.
parents who have struggling teens right now.
Mhm.
Obviously, this may not be the resolution for the child. Obviously, everybody's going to have a different story. But how are you handling it? How was your mama heart in the like? You're like, okay, he needs therapy. I need to. Obviously, you guys made the choice to have him go somewhere else. You
Mhm.
know, at that point in time, were you guys communicating like with him, like? How can we help you? Is there anything you need to tell us? Like, I'm in the
Or was
teen
he
world too.
I was wondering, or is he suppressing? Like, was
Yeah,
he shutting down, like, just kind of just saying, "Okay, fine, I'll do this," or just going against everything?
Oh, that's a loaded question. We're a tight
Yes.
family. We are super tight. But that was a chasm between us.
mhm,
And of course, I'm in the mindset, right? A plus B equals C. We got to get you back to getting back into school and doing well and not being disrespectful and all the things. So
yeah,
um but I mean, gosh, I could look back. Hindsight is 2020, right? I have
of course.
lots of regrets in not giving space to ask. We did counseling, but I never asked a question in saying, what is, how can we help? What are you feeling? We suspected that he was struggling with sexuality. And remember, he's 30 years old now. So this
Mhm.
is 15 years ago. Resources did not exist.
Yeah,
And
sure.
we were like, how do we even ask the question? Because I don't want to accuse a straight kid of being gay at
Mhm.
15. That's offensive. If I
Right, and you don't
open the door to the
right.
conversation,
That's
then
it.
I'm condoning or I'm promoting homosexual. Like there was a lot going on, and we just didn't know how to navigate. We didn't have the language for it, and neither did he.
Sure.
And so that was really hard because we were looking at behavior. We
Mhm.
were not looking at the underlying reason that we were seeing all these manifestations of struggle. And that is a regret I will live with for the rest of my life. I missed it. And so I am really, whenever I sit down with a parent and hear rebellion, depression, anxiety, like ask the questions, get to the root of what's going on. It may not be sexuality, but it's definitely not the outward thing that you are experiencing.
Yeah.
Right.
There's something beneath it.
Which
And
you're so right. And I think just being in the thick of it and in it right now,
Mhm.
I am the question seeker or asker. It's they don't have the words or the ability to articulate right. And so that's the part where you're like, okay, I'm grasping for anything
Yes,
to
and I
know
think
return.
creating the security for your children in saying, there is nothing you are going to ever say to me that will put any kind of distance between us, that will make me love you any less than I do right now, that
Mhm.
will make me stop providing for you. I am here and I will get you whatever resources. If I'm not the person to unload all this stuff onto, I will find you someone that is.
That's so
But
good.
Yeah.
creating that safety net between beneath our children to say, I've got you. I've got you. I don't care what you say to me. And
Isn't that I isn't that fu I mean, the relationship is so what we've got with God, right?
yes,
We are afraid. I mean, people are afraid to argue with God. People are
mhm,
afraid, we think, well, he could never love me, he doesn't, if he only knew, right? Like
yes.
those things. And I'm continually amazed on the closer the closer I get to God, the more I learn about his character and through reading the Bible and things. It's the parallels of what he like parenting,
Yeah.
like that he has
Mhm.
graciously bestowed upon us.
Yes.
I mean, like my relationship with Christ changed the moment I had holding a baby in my hands and knowing that like I could never
Right.
sacrifice this child
Oh, right?
for people
Right. Yeah.
who
Totally.
are yeah, who spit on me and who, completely like I
Yep.
that was just unfathomable. But like
Yes.
just like but at the same time, like, yeah, there are moments when I still hold stuff in or I internalize things shame-wise, like he
Mhm.
doesn't know. I mean,
Right.
you know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Yes.
it's just that's something that I don't think I express enough gratitude to God about, like, thank you for giving us an example, like an
Mhm.
earthly, tangible example as parents to know what
Yes.
your love is for us.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and just
Truly.
practically. But
Truly.
what okay, so at age 22,
Mhm.
he comes out. What is he in college at this time? Is he what life stage is he in? Is he working? Is he living at home again? What is
He's
kind of
at he's at home
okay.
and working full time, like killing it. He worked at a retail store in the mall, like a higher end retail place,
Okay.
trendy, whatever. Killing it in sales, loving life, doing really well. But at the same time, heavily drinking. Like we thought he was going to drink himself to death
Wow.
because that was the mode of using something to avoid everything I'm feeling and avoid the reality.
Yeah.
And he was ramping up and gearing to tell us. But then the minute he thought about it, like, no, I'm going to drink my problems away. So that was a terrifying time because I really thought I'm going to find this kid. I'm going to get a phone call or find him. And it was it was terrible. It was terrifying
Yeah.
considering that. And one day it came flying out of his mouth, and I'm gay. And if you think you're going to pray the gay away, and he's really explosive and terrified. And I said, Connor, stop. Is this the moment that you just want to tell me that you're gay? Yes. And I said, stop. I need you to know I love you, period.
Mm.
I love you, period. And I looked at him and I said, do you feel better now that we know? And a little bit of him kind of like, oh, the sigh of relief, but
Mhm.
also the
Yeah.
defensiveness because he was prepared to be kicked out. And he said, Mom, I held on to it for so long because I could not imagine my life without my family. And I was 99.9% sure that you were going to be there. But that 0.1% was too big a risk, and I calculated it every day
Mm.
thinking it still makes me
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was not overwhelmed by the fact that my son told me that he was gay. I was overwhelmed by the fact that he thought because I love Jesus, that I would no longer have a place in my life for him.
Mm.
After
Mhm.
22 years, that still wasn't secure enough for him, and that wrecked me. That wrecked me. I thought, how do we undo this? How do we help kids know you are not alone in feeling what you're feeling? In families to know you are not alone in walking beside a child
Mhm.
in on this journey. Like, how do we do this better? Because within the church, we don't catch people because they don't fit the formula, and we leave people bleeding and unresourced. That's not a word, but it's my word today.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do to help people navigate holding on to the faith that you live by and the child that God gave you?
Yeah.
And that is a very lonely space until you realize you're not alone and that God can handle all of it. And he
Mm.
catches every tear and every fear and every moment. And he's not lost in the middle of it. He's not afraid of it. And there has never been an emergency in heaven over it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but shedding all of that as a parent, because now you feel like I'm the one with the target on my back. If I'm feeling like that in my church, no kidding that my child has felt it.
Yeah. Well, you just spoke so beautifully of, like, just honoring God, loving him in every bit of that. However, I'm sure you didn't immediately feel that way. I mean, maybe you did, and if you did, that's absolutely incredible. But were you mad at God? Were you frustrated? Were you like, "How am I supposed to do this now?" Like, did you and your husband go through that, or were you relieved, actually, because you knew what was going on in the depths of your son's heart?
It is relief, it is grief, it is fear, it is question. Like all, yes, the entire ball of wax. I was relieved for his sake to know, like, okay, now we've got a place we can work from and we can talk
Yeah.
through and we can work to understand this. Terrified of being judged, of being mistreated, misunderstood. Um, that Lord, is loss of salvation a real thing? Is my kid secure? Is like, what does this do for his own salvation and his story? All of those things, like you experience all of that at once.
Yeah.
I mean, some parents explode and lose it and have a lot of repairing to do. We never had that. We had more reassurance that we had to provide to Connor to say, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I think it took him a minute to actually believe it.
Well, he'd
To
already
go,
told himself the story of what was gonna happen.
oh, sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
For
he had to read
years.
that story for himself of like, "Oh, wait, really? I was wrong. Like, they're here."
He
Yeah.
was still just last summer at 29 years old. He and I sat in a counselor's office and he said, I still think that you don't think I'm as good as I could be. I still think that you don't love me as much, that you don't approve of me as much, and you wish I was straight. And I looked at him and I said, I'm going to tell you no. And let me tell you why. Because of what I have learned about God and his character and you and what this has done for our relationship, I wouldn't trade that
Mm.
because it has deepened my faith. It has strengthened my resolve and it has stripped away all of the falsities that we live in our Christian little worlds of this is the box, fit inside of it.
Mhm.
And it
Yeah.
really takes your faith down to the studs and it makes you go, what does gospel love look and live like?
Mhm.
How is Jesus with skin on presented in a world of people that I once did not understand and who once did not understand me?
Yeah.
And it has,
Exactly. It is that mutual misunderstanding.
oh, yes,
What I talked
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there is rightful fear from the LGBT community looking at people like you and me who say, you love Jesus, you're not safe.
Yeah.
You're going to judge me and mischaracterize me and not give me space. And
Mhm.
you know what? That's very real because me in my own ministry at Pride and Promises have been accused of compromising my faith, of validating sin, of siding with things that are ungodly, while I'm purely saying, are you open to a conversation with someone who doesn't think, act, live like you do?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
like Jesus did it with I'm sorry, every single one of us, because he's a
Yeah.
holy God. He went to the places and he was judged and mischaracterized for eating with sinners and
Yeah.
rubbing elbows and dining with people that were unclean and unworthy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, there is a very real fear that we are a threat and we are unsafe to people.
Well, I
And
think that, and I absolutely agree with that. And I think part of my is the lack of communication from pastors. I think in the Christian camp, you have the 2 extremes, and that's all outsiders know of, right?
Mhm.
Like
Yep,
the brimstone and
yep,
hell and brimstone, you're all going to hell. Well, this is why you need
yes,
to be saved. And then the absolutely affirming, we have the flag behind the altar, God was it was a female,
right.
like there's no in between for people to, which, and I understand people have prejudices.
Oh, yes.
We all have prejudices based on how we were raised. But I'm thinking back, I'm trying to think like probably 6, 7, 8 churches between just trying new churches out when we've moved or gone to different places. But I'm thinking, I don't remember seeing any of them. One, I don't remember hearing a pastor talk about biblical sexuality from the stage, from the pulpit in this context. Yet, like talking about, yeah, save yourself for marriage, but like, we're not going to talk about being gay. We're not talking about that. And I don't remember any of these churches because I've been fairly active in a lot of these churches and looking at their events and resources and
Yep.
activities. And I can probably look at every single one of those websites today and not see a resource for parents or young adult and, to give them a space of asking questions. So no wonder
Mhm.
that everybody assumes that, well, you love Jesus, so you hate me. We don't, and it's strictly out of fear, out of, I believe, the pastors, because they either wanna say, not gonna touch that at all because I don't wanna be
Mhm.
controversial," or they just lean in all the way, and then it's a completely different religion.
Yes. And what's interesting is I just had a long meeting with the one of the directors at our church yesterday. And I said to her, we're in a church of a couple thousand people. And my story is almost a decade long. I am still meeting with the same 5 women that I did a decade ago. And I Mhm. There are more people. There are more we are real people. We are real
Yeah.
families.
Mm.
And and Connor even said, "Mom, if you are struggling with addiction, there's a group for you. If you're addicted to pornography, there's a group for you. If you have been betrayed or you are the betrayer or you're dealing with grief and loss, there's a group, there's a group, there's a group." Where do I go to ask my questions? Because I was told at youth group, we don't talk about that. And this is what God said. And if you're outside of it, then that's your problem. And we're not going to address it.
Yeah.
And you're wrong and you're worthless. And that's when kids get the I'm an abomination language in their heads. And so I said to our director, long story short, they asked me to write a blog about my relationship with my son several years ago, and it ended up not getting written and put on the website for our women's ministry.
You wrote it, but it ended up not being published. Like,
Correct.
okay.
And Connor was incensed. Like, the church won't even let you say you love me because I wrote specifically, like, I am not asking God to change the landscape of scripture as I understand it. I'm not asking him to compromise his values to fit my story. But doggone it, he gave me this kid and I love him and I'm gonna love him and there's always gonna be space at my table. So pull up a chair.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was incensed by that. And we got to talk about that yesterday. And she said, I'm so sorry. That must have hurt. And I can't believe that you are still engaged in a place that hasn't really seen your family.
Mhm.
And so I said, I get it. This was, you know, 10 years ago when this happened, and there weren't as many resources. There wasn't as much language. And I said, I appreciate that. And I said, what will make me sorry now is now that we have had this conversation and you know how important it is to so many families like mine, if we do nothing now, that will make me really sorry because we are real families and we feel alone and we're trying to navigate, Lord, how do I keep all of my faith intact without being accused of compromising my values? I'm going to love my child because God loves me in all of the ways I offend him. If I was the only person on the face of this planet, Jesus would still be on that cross bleeding and dying
And
because
Yeah.
I know better than the person that you want to villainize because they look like they are a bigger, badder sinner because of the life, the attractions they feel, the life they live, the things they're struggling with, whatever it is.
We've convinced ourselves that there is a hierarchy to sin. Like
100%.
we have told ourselves, well, I'm a really good person. I haven't murdered anyone.
I don't
Oh,
do
I
that thing.
rank that. I don't do that. I've never cheated on my husband.
Right.
Like that's not the same as, stealing 20 bucks from the cash register. Like we have convinced ourselves and we're prideful people anyways, but like
For
we have
sure.
told ourselves like that, well, if you do this, then you're awful. Like, and then but then over time, now culture has normalized so many of like, n- you know, they're trying to normalize it, right? To make it, and it's the enemy, obviously, but he's, to make us feel like, no, it's okay on this side. But like if we were still at the point where we thought, no, every sin is equal, like like I am just as much of a sinner. Like the cross was exactly for this moment, just as much it is for, the inmate on death row. That
Yes. And
that we tell ourselves we're better than we are.
Yeah.
we forget that grace is scandalous. Honestly, it is
Mm,
the scandalous grace of God that covers me and everybody else.
Yeah.
And we want to be one another's Holy Spirits. And if
yeah.
You mean I'm not supposed to be my husband's? I learned that a long time ago.
yes,
I'm
we
still
do, right?
yeah, I'm still
Well, I
trying.
mean,
I
hey,
mean,
it's about progress, not perfection.
yeah,
For
I'm still auditioning for that role.
we will always be. There will always be an element of that. But really, when we're impatient with the process, right? We are so
Yes.
we want to speak the truth and have someone believe it. And if you don't, then either we have failed as believers or
Mhm.
you really suck as a believer. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
You're
something
so
wrong.
right.
And we don't want to be patient with people's stories and we don't want to give people space to ask hard questions.
Mm,
And we don't want to go to places that are uncomfortable and
yeah,
we forget that truth is lived out in the context of relationships. And if we don't build relationships and if we don't invest time with people, we are never going to have any influence.
yeah,
So stop screaming at me because I shut down when you scream at me and pull up a chair and ask. I think we forget we want to deliver truth. We want to throw it up on everybody and we forget to ask questions. And do you know what happens when you ask questions? People eventually empty their brains and all of their thoughts out.
mm,
And when they finally get them out, do you know what they're able to do? Ask you a question in return.
yeah.
Then you have the space to be able to dialogue. But if we don't stop and ask people and let them tell their stories and get everything out, we never have room to gain influence and understanding and build bridges across
Mhm.
divides that are deep chasms that leave deep spiritual and emotional wounds on people.
Yeah.
And
You're
so
so right. And one of the things that, like, I know as a parent we struggle with because we fail as parents, right? So we have those
all the
moments
time.
where we're in the bedroom and we're having conversations and the frustration builds because the response that you're looking for isn't coming out, or you'll ask a question and it's, I don't know, or because, or I forgot, those responses, and you're getting frustrated. And so then it just leads to more talking, fixing, lecture, boom. I've lost the chance. And I'm speaking for failing as a parent and
Oh,
over and
yeah.
over. And you like just the way you speak to it though is so beautiful. Obviously, you've had some years and some experience walking through that. But what advice would you give to parents like us, who are going through hard things with our teens and our children and even in our marriages? Because I think this is so
Mhm.
prevalent. We are in this world of argument or avoid, argue or avoid.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's been created out of COVID. We all have difference of opinions, even our communities, way we believe about, politics and religion and just
Yep.
all the stuff that's going on at our schools. I mean, this is just, I mean, we're a very tight, close family, very similar to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And we have had all these questions, but it does still lead to argue and avoid because we're not sitting there listening enough to the answers and
Right.
waiting for the response to come and then to be able to just sit there and, like your friend at church said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize how that hurt you.
Mhm.
That space, we miss that. We're missing that. And I know that's what we're missing in our family as I'm processing out loud on our podcast. Um,
But you spoke to
you
exactly the crap we fell into.
Mhm,
You want to ask questions
mhm,
really to manipulate the answer. And
Yeah.
we're trying to ask in such a way that you will answer in the way that I want to hear,
yeah,
Yeah.
rather than be curious about really what's going on. And tell me more. Tell me more.
mhm,
Instead of, yeah, but they answer. And then we try to tweak our next response to get them to turn the corner in the way that we want them to turn the corner. And sometimes they're like, I'm not turning a corner. I am way over here.
Yeah.
And we have to just keep asking because if you don't understand the perspective from which they shoot, the influence that is driving what they're feeling and sensing and processing and where it's making them have these emotional responses, we'll never get to the root and we'll just keep doing these surface level things and putting band-aids on bullet holes
yeah,
and then they bleed out overnight and you're wondering what the heck happened. And
mhm,
so
yeah,
you just have to back up and slow down. And I think it's very fear-filled for parents
mm,
if if my kid says, "I don't wanna go to church anymore. I don't wanna go to youth group."
Oh, yeah.
And that's we make Christians in churches. No, we don't, any more than we make people cars if we put them in garages.
yeah,
Yeah.
You don't do that. And I think it's terrifying to say, "Okay, you need a break from church. Why is that? What's going on? What are you feeling? What are you
mm,
sensing? How are you being?" Connor got slapped clear across the face by a kid at youth group. Yeah, you don't want to go. And so we can do spiritual growth outside the walls of church.
yeah,
But again, it's the formula. And we have to step out and say, okay, Lord, what do you need me to do with and for and beside this child who
mm,
is struggling?
mhm,
And what does that look like? And not worry about what everybody else within those walls thinks,
mm,
because you're not going to do it right for somebody. You're just not. You're going to be judged. And I really had to peel that back and say, you know what? I answer to an audience of one,
mhm,
Amen.
yep,
exactly one. And it doesn't matter if my fellow churchgoer or my neighbor in the backyard approves of what I'm doing. They
mm,
don't understand. They don't
Right.
have all of the factors in your equation that you are balancing.
yep,
Yep.
And my goodness, I don't know if this is true for you, but I have three completely different children. I have to approach each of them
Yeah.
yep.
differently. And I can,
Unfortunately, they're all if I could just, it would be so much easier if they
Yes,
were all the same a little bit. And like, that's not,
wouldn't be as entertaining.
you know,
or is there another word for that? But
yes,
Yeah,
but lots of words for that.
yes,
Mhm.
Well, I have another question because,
Yeah.
I want to get to your organization and all you have done. You
Okay.
know, y- we are called to be a champion for the church, and I know that's one thing that you have spoke to, of still meeting with your small group, still going to church, still meeting with your director. Like that's what you're
Yeah.
doing, which is, I mean, I commend you. Way to be like just so in relationship with God and knowing that this is what he is asking of me.
And I would,
Oh,
I'm sorry, I know you have a question in this. I was just going to say there's so many, it's so encouraging to hear how you have continued to do that with the same church because so many get church hurt, right? That's a real thing. And then
Spiritual
they,
trauma is real.
yes, and then they walk away and
Mhm.
at a certain point they justify it, right? The
Yep.
people are not Jesus. The church, like, no matter how we try, the church is not Jesus. Like, you're confusing people with the church with Jesus, and that's not,
Right.
his word is in a book. He is, his own. Like, we're flawed human beings.
mhm.
Churches are flawed organizations, but to know that you didn't just say, well, fine, if you guys aren't going to do this, I'm walking away. But sorry, I just wanted to recognize that
Yeah.
people and encourage others that,
Mhm.
like, you may have been hurt by your church. Like,
Mhm.
there
Well,
is still
and you're staying there in hopes to make a difference, one for your family, but for others,
right.
and so that's amazing. So, one, I want you to speak to your promises and
Pride
Right,
and
and pride and
promises.
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 Sorry, yes. I want you to speak to that. But then also, if you have advice for someone who is similar to you that has been, feeling unresourced at their church, how they can have some courage to step forward and talk to their pastor or a prayer team or a small group or, what advice would you have for them?
I think going back to the church thing first, it is really disrupting the foundational rhythm of what the church has laid. And I'm not saying upset scripture and go against scripture, but it is within the church. I said to our women's director, she's not the director anymore. She has a different role. I don't remember her title, but I said, here's the thing I'm going to tell you is extremely difficult. Once a quarter, we have a fire away Q&A, like anyone can throw a question up to the pastors and they just answer live on stage. The only time the audience applauds is when someone asks an LGBTQ question and the pastors respond with biblical sexuality. Everybody applauds. We can talk about any other controversial thing, any other thing that causes discord in the church, but that's the only time people applaud. And I said, what do you think that sends as a
Hmm.
message to the families in the congregation who are struggling with sexuality or have a child? It's saying, oh, see, we're better than all of this and all of these people. Like
Mhm.
it hits all the wrong chords and says, you are less than. And we're gonna support this by applauding just that, not applauding any other ways you uphold scripture, just when it has to do with not even sexuality. Because you could ask a question about, I'm a heterosexual living with my mate before we get married. They're not going to clap for that. But if someone says, I'm struggling with homosexual feelings and they get the Bible, then everybody claps and I just think just by something as simple as an applause, we hurt people.
Hmm.
And so we have to be sensitive to how our words and our actions land. And it is difficult, right? Because we want to hold a biblical standard for everything in life, not just sexuality. And so I think we have to do a better job of helping people understand in our churches we are real people,
Yeah.
for one. And that is going to disrupt the foundational rhythms a little bit. And we're going to have to get used to being a little uncomfortable and having uncomfortable conversations that make you feel, you are not going to compromise your values or your faith if you talk about or talk to someone who is in the LGBT community. It's
Right.
not any more
Yeah.
than you're going to be a leper if you have lunch with somebody. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yep.
And so we have to kind of break down those barriers. And then your second question for parents themselves.
Mhm.
finding someone that you know is going to be safe, who will hold your story with great care, because some people will wrap your story in a prayer request so that they can gossip to someone else about your life. And then the judgment starts. So you do have to be careful in who you approach. One, to protect your child,
Yeah.
because your child isn't a story. Your child is a child,
Mm.
and they have a real life, and there are real consequences for mishandling people and their hearts and where they are in the middle of their stories. And so sometimes that's a little difficult to navigate, because you guard and protect your child until they're ready to have someone know about everything that they're feeling. Um, and then to find someone who can say, I've got you. Let's find some resources. And that takes someone with some guts
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
make that first step, because it's going to be unpopular,
Mm.
and you are not everyone's going to understand you. But I think the more sensitivity that comes from leadership helps break down the walls, so that we can just start communicating and not making people feel strange for being within the walls of their own churches.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So how does your organization work?
I created Pride and Promises, and people are like, "Oh, you're giving, gay pride No, I'm not. I am saying the pride of the LGBT community and the promises of God are not void of each other.
Mm.
Like, we can stand in the middle and say, I see you. I hear you. You're a person. I have the promise of God in the middle of this story, no matter where it takes me." And so that's really where the title of Pride and Promises came from.
Mhm.
But what I do is I have a website with resources on it for parents to say, hey, especially if your child just came out and you're feeling lost, I just have a 31 conversation starters. Just start talking with your child to understand their story, their struggle, how you can help, what you can do, what you shouldn't do, because there are some do's and don't pitfalls to avoid, right?
Sure.
Right.
But then I have a journal for parents. It's a 31-day workbook, just to really understand the heart of your child and the God in the middle of your story. And I've got a 7 module, 30 video course that really gets to the heart of so many of the questions that we have as families, including dealing with your own emotions, understanding your child's perspective, all things faith and church, building your family legacy. What if I just can't do this? How to avoid the pitfalls, just lots of stuff. And we have a community group and some one-on-one coaching if you also need some extra help. It's really just designed to say to parents, you are not alone on the journey. Don't try to do this yourself, because we all mess it up when we're trying to do it together and support each other and see each
Yeah.
other's
Yeah.
perspectives. And we're all going to walk it out a little bit differently,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
the strength of your relationship really dictates where you can take this, and how you can have conversations with your child.
Mm.
But it's just so important, because literally life and death is at stake. Kids die at a astounding rate already. But in Christian homes where kids are struggling with sexuality, the suicidality can be up to 8 times higher in Christian
Wow.
homes than in the general public. And my son lost a friend, and no one
Mm.
should have to experience that kind of tragedy. Nobody. I don't
Yeah.
care where you shoot from. We
Mhm.
have got to keep kids alive. And to do that, we have to go to hard places that we have to trust God in the middle of the story for. But
Mhm.
please, parents, don't do this alone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
My
good.
my question is Connor is Connor involved in the organization with you? Because I know that he really said, "Mom, if you don't do this, who will?" At one point, right?
Yes. He's like, tell your story. I don't
Yeah.
want to be part of it right now. He's still working through his own spiritual trauma and angst and anger. And, if God made me in his image and perfectly and holy, then why am I struggling with this?
Yeah.
And then to the, well, he's totally fine with it. And God approves of gay people. And then I'm like, okay, then if he does, and that's your belief system, what are you so about? Why are you mad at God if you think it? So
Mhm.
he is working through a lot of those things. We talk a lot about it between us, but he's like, do your thing. I'm not ready to know about it right now. I'm in a process, but I don't want to hold you back because I know how important the work is.
'Cause
Um,
Awesome.
I'm sure at this point, he knows people he has friends who, like, would literally have given anything to have a parent like you,
Mhm.
yeah.
like and so, like, that's amazing that while he's like, "I'm not ready. I don't know where I am with God yet, but I respect your relationship, mom. I also I'm thankful that that's what you have been for me, even though he still goes back, still struggles with it internally sometimes. But the fact that he realizes that, like, hey, my mom made such a difference in my life.
Mhm.
And, she, it will help my other individuals, other kids, if their parents react in this way versus, or these kids know that their parents love them regardless
Yes.
what they do.
Yeah, and at first he was like, "You're doing all the wrong things. You need to help people in the LGBT community. Like, that's where you need to put your focus, mom. You need to."
Oh,
And I
Okay.
said, "I don't disagree that we need to love and find grace and have conversations." But I said, "Connor, if we don't grab the parents and teach them how to walk this journey well and how not to turn your back on your child, we have missed a whole lot of opportunity
mhm.
Yeah.
because if we can't teach parents how to walk this journey out well, kids are still left alone, cut and bleeding and wounded.
Yeah.
And so it's in both. And as much as he's like, I still don't totally agree with everything you agree with, I can't stop you from living your dream out. And I know that you are helping people, because he's wearing his own lenses. He sees where we failed, and we did. He sees where we screwed up. He understands what he did have, but those wounds are leading the way he sees right. And that's
Mhm.
totally fine. He has
Yeah.
to work through that. He
Right.
knows, oh, he and I are tight. That kid calls me almost every day. And so we talk all the time and it's fantastic. Um, and so there's still some tension there, but it is good tension and he
Yeah.
understands my heart behind it. I
Yeah.
understand his woundedness that he is working through, but we don't let that disrupt the nearness that we have in our relationship. And so all of that is also giving us some healing because he
Mhm.
sees me not changing my value system, but understanding the scope of this as being so much bigger than I once did.
Yeah.
And he's learning to understand that I can love Jesus and love you and give you room to have your belief system even if it doesn't align with mine, just like you have to give me room for my belief system, even if it doesn't align with yours. And it's those conversations that we need to have within the church. I have a Muslim friend.
Yeah.
They believe everything differently than I do. That doesn't mean I turn my back or not leave room for you to express your faith. It means there's more room for conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So let's do that. And so it's even at Pride and Promises, breaking those things down with families and saying, this is a doable journey. And you know what? It is full of joy. I think we think, well, oh my gosh, if all of your kids aren't following Christ, then you've got to live in this solemnness. And that is just completely untrue. There
Yeah.
is so much joy in every journey. And if it's this, it's just going to be something else that's going to disrupt my faith and shake
Yeah.
rattle my cage. So,
It's why he's told us over and over and over again that our joy is complete in him.
Mhm.
It is
yes,
not based on circumstances. It's
no,
not like, and he makes that abundantly clear over and over again,
yeah,
but we so often miss it. Like
Mhm.
we want to again live in this happily ever after. And we can if we're living in his joy.
Yeah.
I
But
have a sign in my bathroom that says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And it's
Mhm.
so true. And
yeah,
it is a choice. If I mean, I could be overwhelmed. Listen, this is not the only bump in my life. Like, this is not the only thing that has
Yeah.
has confronted scripture and made me go, "Oh, life is hard." I've had all kinds of health issues. I have 2 other children, and guess what? They're not perfect either.
Yeah.
And they married 2 perfect men. So,
Mhm.
there's a whole bunch of us messed up people just trying to figure out how to do life well together and give
Yeah.
space and room for people to grow. It's messy. The gospel is messy. And so
Yeah.
why should we expect anything less? But
Yeah.
we can trust that God is always in the details. And
Mm,
Philippians 1:6 is my favorite verse because it says,
Mhm.
"He who began a good work will complete it
Yeah.
at the day of Christ." Like, okay, but Jesus isn't here yet. So that means he's still working
yep.
and
Mhm.
he is working on completion. What that looks like, I don't know. But I
Yeah.
have faith enough that he knows and he's got us.
Oh,
And
So good.
we camp there and do one step at a time. That's all we
Well,
can do.
we're ending our summer series with a couple of questions. I feel like you kind of answered it already. The question
yeah.
really is like, how is God redeeming this for you in your life, and whether He, it's already written or redeemed, or you're in the process. How would you share with our listeners?
I think the biggest thing that I learned in all of this is we put our focus elsewhere and look at my child. I've got to get my child on track. I've got to do. And really, the redemption story is right here.
Mm,
I say to parents sometimes, maybe this journey isn't at all about your child. Maybe this is about you.
mm,
And
Mm,
what is God teaching you? And what is He peeling back in you that He needs to refine through circumstance? And it really has been, I think this is about me and my self righteousness and my pride and my formula
mm.
that I ascribed to walking a perfection, a perfected faith. Cause we all have a little bit of the perfection infection, right?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it's got to look good. And when you step back and say, if you take your eyes off of your child, not, I'm not saying turn your back, but I'm saying,
Right.
okay, why did the Lord bring this to me? He could have brought me anything and he brought me this.
mm,
Why? There is purpose in
good.
that. And there is a bigger lesson in all of it all the time. It's never the thing. It's never the surface level. It's never the cancer. It's never the financial, loss. It's
Hurtful.
never the
Yeah.
job loss. It's
Hmm.
not my kid is gay. It's not. It
Mhm.
is God is so much. That's a shallow answer. He's so much deeper than that. And so if we can just sit back and say, okay, Lord, show me yourself in this, show me how to grow in you in this process so that your light shines in me and I can continue to share it and live it out without judgment, without fear, without angst, without anger. Shed all those things and go, really, what would Jesus do?
Mm.
Sometimes it's just sit with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
He doesn't have to say a thing. He can just sit with you and be present and bring the peace and calm so that you can do the next thing.
Ugh, so good.
We can't end it any better than that, Kim. Like
I know.
you just wrapped a nice little bow on that for us. We appreciate that.
Well,
It's
Kim,
it's not over. I'm sharing what I've learned because I wish someone had told me so many of these things when we first started and to release the panic of the situation and just remember you have to take one step at a time. You
yeah.
don't have to look a decade down the road. You have to do today. And God is not panicked, therefore we don't need to be.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
your message is just it's so pure and honoring to God. Anybody can take away so many good nuggets from this episode and just from your heart and from your walk with the Lord. So, thank you so much for being so vulnerable and sharing with us.
Yes.
Thank
And
you.
we encourage everybody to go check out
Mm.
prideandpromises.com. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
that is.
Prideandpromises.com and find those resources, whether they be for you or for a friend or, just to have in your tool belt. Because a lot of times we, in our communities, like sometimes it's, we need to be the one that says, hey, you might need that, or
Yeah.
we can pass that along.
Yep.
So, and then where else can people find you, Kim?
I do have a Facebook, Pride and Promises, and there is an Instagram account. I'm not real great at social media. Yeah.
Join the
Your
club.
ministry is bigger than that.
Yeah,
Working on it, working on it. And
Ministry
we
is bigger than
are
social media.
yes, we are working on a podcast and it will be called Pride and Promises. So that's the next
Yeah.
thing, the big project. But the website right now is the main place. If you send me an email, I personally read and answer every single one of them. So even if it's just a question, where do I start? Or I blew it, what do I do? I will answer every email by my own hand. It's me, my words. I don't have AI, I don't have assistants. It's me. So please reach out. Don't do this alone.
Awesome. Well,
Oh,
thank
thank
you.
you.
And we'll make sure all those resources and links are in our show description and show notes
Yeah.
for everyone here. And we just want to say thank you so much to our Unlikely Housewives. And we hope that this episode has been encouraging and informative and has inspired you in some kind of way and given you hope. So
All right, housewives, until next time.
until next time,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.